Irankarapte, Habu Junko, Sekoro Kurehe An. こんにちは。カリフォルニア大学日本研究センター長の羽生純子です。Welcome to the second part of our CJS JSPS special event titled Language, Indigenous Knowledge, and the Cultural Landscapes of the Ainu, Perspectives from Nibutani, Hokkaido. I am Junko Habu, Professor of Anthropology and the Chair of the Center for Japanese Studies, or CJS. In this special lecture series that we started last Friday, 3 distinguished speakers from Nibutani present lectures on their ongoing efforts and future perspectives to revitalize the Ainu culture, language, and cultural landscapes. Each presentation is followed by comments from a scholar working on aspects of Ainu and or indigenous cultures and languages. Through the conversations between the speakers and discussants, and through the following Q&A sessions, we hope to share new ideas with our audience for collaborative approaches between scholars and the various stakeholders. Today, we are delighted to welcome Mr. Kenji Sekine, Director of the Ainu Cultural Learning Section of the Board of Education of Biratori Town, as our main speaker. And Professor Takayuki Okazaki of Kinda University is here with us as our discussant. We are co-hosting this event with the San Francisco office of the Japan Society for the Promotion of Science, or JSPS, together with the Research Institute for Humanity and Nature in Kyoto, as well as various UC Berkeley units, including the Native American Student Development, the Archaeological Research Facility, the Department of Anthropology, and the Hearst Museum of Anthropology of UC Berkeley. Today, I am speaking from the campus of the University of California, Berkeley. I recognize that Berkeley sits on the territory of Huchun, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people, the successors of the historic and sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Muwekuma Ohlone tribe and other familial descendants of the Verona Band. I recognize that the Berkeley community has benefited and continues to benefit from the use and occupation of this land. So before I introduce the speaker, first I'd like to ask Dr. Tamiya, the director of the JSPS San Francisco office, to deliver an opening address.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Toru Tamiya, and I'm the director of the Japan Society for the Promotion of Science, JSPS San Francisco office. On behalf of JSPS, I would like to thank the distinguished speakers, guests, and participants for making this symposium possible. I would also like to thank Professor Junko Habu, the chair of the Center for Japanese Studies, for her generous help in continuing this joint symposium for many years. I cannot forget to thank Kumi Sawada Hadra, Program Director of CJS, for all of her hard work organizing this. Thank you very much. I'm honored to make this address as one of the sponsors, and I'm happy to note that this is the 17th CJS JSPS Joint Symposium since the JSPS San Francisco office was established in 2003. The title of this symposium is Language, Indigenous Knowledge and the Cultural Landscapes of the Ainu. To approach this topic from various perspectives, we have invited three distinguished speakers from Nibutani to present lectures on their ongoing effort and future perspectives to realize the Ainu culture, language, and cultural landscape. This talk of Ainu culture reminds me the geographical names in Hokkaido. If you look at the place named there, about 80% are derived from the Ainu language. In particular, there are many geographical names that allot Chinese character betsu and nai, like Noboribetsu, Monbetsu, and Wakanai, which means kawa and sawa in Japanese. From this, it can be inferred that the river was closely related to the Ainu's culture and life. On the last day of this symposium, there will be a lecture on Ainu and dam construction. And I hope that there will be a story about Ainu culture and the river as well. Finally, I'd like to introduce our fellowships to research work in Japan. For those seeking to deepen their international research ties, JSPS supports short-term and long-term fellowship programs for collaborative research at Japanese university or institutes. These programs are available for PhD candidates, postdoc researchers, and faculty members. If you are interested, please email one of JSPS staff members. I would like to finish by thanking you all for supporting the JSPS San Francisco office in promoting international academic exchange across the world, a wide spectrum of fields. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tamiya. So this is the second part of our three-part talk series. As Dr. Tamiya said, normally we hold a JSPS and CJS conference once a year on campus in person. But due to the pandemic situation, we were unable to invite people over. And instead, we decided to have this three-part discussion. And starting last Friday, Friday here in California or Saturday in Japan, we had the honor of welcoming Mr. Kayano Shiro, who gave a lecture titled Indigenous Rights and the Importance of Ainu Language Education, followed by comments from Professor Chiesaka Kibara of Syracuse University. And we also had a really informative Q&A session. Through Kayano Sensei's lecture and the Q&A session, we learned a lot about the new developments in Ainu language education and Ainu cultural revitalization efforts. Mr. Kayano also highlighted the importance of Mr. Kenji Sekine's contributions to Ainu language education. Born in Hyogo Prefecture, Mr. Sekine moved to Nibutani in 1998 and married to Ainu artist Maki Sekine. Together with Maki-san, he has been working actively as an instructor at Nibutani Ainu language class for children. In collaboration with the Maori in New Zealand, he has adopted the Te Atarangi method to teach the Ainu language. And until the pandemic, he annually organized Ainu language camps in Nibutani, and he regularly gives Ainu language seminars at many public schools in Hokkaido. Our discussant today is Professor Takayuki Okazaki. Professor Okazaki's research focuses on the revitalization and education of indigenous languages and cultures, with a particular emphasis on the study of the language and cultural revitalization of the Maori people in New Zealand and the Ainu people in Hokkaido. His research also examines the impacts of international interactions among indigenous peoples on their identities, languages, cultures, and education. Mr. Kenji Sekine will first give his lecture for about 20 to 30 minutes, and then Professor Okazaki will give his comments before we move on to the Q&A session. You can submit questions at any point during the talk using the Q&A function. Given that we already have 100 participants, chat will get confusing, so please place your question in the Q&A section. Your microphone and camera are off as a default setting, and I'm sorry, but this is how the webinar system works. If you place a question on the Q&A section, and if your question looks complicated, and if we don't have too many questions, I might be able to turn on the microphone so that you can ask questions directly. But I don't know how many questions we'll get, so I can't promise I would be able to do so with all the questions. We do have an interpreter today, Ms. Beth Carey, who did a marvelous job last Friday and who's been working with us for a long time for any conversation that take place in Japanese. So we will take questions in Japanese. So, Sekine Kenji-san, yoroshiku onegai shimasu. Please welcome Mr. Sekine.
Kere ka ilang karapte nispa utara kakke mautara shinekin ne kon kamina nep kunya somone akka shisamsa ni kunya koro katane niptanta ohon no kan wa ainitak ainu puri shibira sakata yak pirika se koro kuyainu koro namma neno an nepki kukipne kuneru ne Tane nep irara keutum kukoro kasamoki no kukip next nispautara kakkemautara enka opiukiwa enkoreya. Thank you very much. My name is Kenji Sekine. I'm a teacher of Ainu language in here in Nibutani. I'm honored to have an opportunity to talk about our activities. But before that, let me introduce myself. Let me tell my stories. I was born and raised in Osaka area in Japan. Let me share my screen. So yeah, this one. Ilan kalapte is a word, greeting word for hello. I was born and raised in the Osaka area, but when I was young, when I was 27 years old, I quit the job and decided to go to journey using just my little motorcycle, 50cc motorcycle, and look all over Japan. So I did it. And first I go down south and visited many beautiful Okinawa areas, islands. If I like the place, I stay there a week or 2 weeks and then move to another island. I've been continuing those type of journey, and after certain area, I go up to Hokkaido. Let me show you the picture. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Oh, let me show you. I want you to Oh, sorry. This is a Hokkaido's map. Hokkaido is a relatively big island, and here is Nibutani, where I'm living now. And this is the Sapporo city. It's the biggest city in Hokkaido. 2 million people living here. And here, there's a Chitose. In here, we have a biggest airport. So for many people, it's an entrance gate to Hokkaido. From Chitose to Nibutani, it's just a 1 hour drive. From Sapporo to Nibutani, it's 2 hour drive. So we can say it's a relatively close place, but Nibutani is an inland kind of rural area. So I travel all around Hokkaido with my little motorcycle and just happened to step by to Nibutani. In that days, there's a lot of rider houses. We call it rider houses. It's a accommodation facilities. People can stay there. Most of them is with no charge. So it's really convenient place for young travelers. And my wife, Maki, right now she's my wife, but her family run one of those rider house. So I stay there, and I came Nibutani in the summertime. So there's a lot of visitors, travelers around me, and I had a fun time with them. But summer's gone. Most of the people go back to their places. But autumn is a mushroom hunting season in Nibutani. So, and I enjoyed that type of activities, and I can say I lost the timing to return back to my place. I went out with my wife Maki, and so suddenly she got pregnant. So I deeply thought about 1 week or 2 weeks, but I decided to stay here, stay in Nibutani. I got married and stay here. I think I thought I can do whatever I want to do wherever I live. That's a way of thinking in that time of me. So my wife's place, wife's family ran the craft shops, souvenir shop. So most of my wife's family's member is craft persons. They doing weaving, traditional weaving, carving, or sewing, something like that in Nibutani. So you can say Nibutani is a really unique place. It's just a 300 people's community, but about 75% residents have roots in Ainu. It's a really unique thing, even in Hokkaido. Other than Nibutani, every Ainu people live in minority situation. So there's a lot of activities occurred in here in Nibutani. So this is a picture of center part of Nibutani, and now we can see the Municipal Ainu Museum. This modern building is a Ainu Museum. In here, you can see the lots of 1,000 of Ainu tours in here, and here's like a park. We rebuilt traditional houses called chise. And this picture is same place, looking from another direction. In here, bottom the picture, we can see the community center over. In here, we have a Ainu language class for children once a week. The next to this building, this is originally for craft persons, but this is also site of Ainu language class for children once a week. And now let me mention about Mr. Kayano Shigeru. He was a big leader Ainu language, Ainu cultural revitalization movement. He was born in 1926 and passed away 2006. He was the only member of Japanese government's parliament as an Ainu person. But before that, he was our town's council member for a long time. So I believe he's been suggesting for our town to build Ainu Cultural Museum. So thanks for him. We have a really great museum. And he also started language classes. Right now I'm doing that. He started 1980s. And also he created Biratori. Biratori is the town's name, Biratori Ainu Culture Preservation Association. In there, we are trying to hand down Ainu traditional dances, ritual customs, and Ainu cuisines. So he was a very, very big leader. This picture is a member of my language class of children. About 20 children come to my class. When I came here, my wife, Maki, already involved the class. I believe in that time, the main teacher of this class was Shiro-san, Shiro Kayano, the son of Shigeru Kayano-san. But my wife was assistant teacher, but after that, for 5 years, Maki took over the main teacher's role, and I also started involved this class. In that time, they were gathering in the Saturday or Sunday, the off day of the school, and in the daytime, and go outside and just say something like name of trees in Ainu, or just play tag or play hide and seek, just like that. But I gradually became the main teacher of there, and I want it to make it more, how can I say, daily basis activity. It can't be a daily base, but I want to make it more practice since. So I changed the schedule from weekends to weekdays evening, Thursdays 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. First, I try to write down some Ainu language, Ainu words in the blackboard, and children write it down to their notebooks. But it didn't work out. In that way, children didn't follow me. So they get very, they get really easy to boring in that way. So now I introduce a lot of more songs. I always play guitar, acoustic guitar, and sing the Ainu songs with them, and lots of dances and lots of games. This is another picture of our activities. They are playing flashcard, Ainu language flashcards. So they are really amazing. Children can remember many 100 words so short amount of time. So about 4 years ago, I tried to make it double. I decided to have the class twice a week. First, it's once a week, but right now we're doing twice a week because I believe it's too short, too little for children to listen and speak Ainu if we're doing just once a week. So I make it double, but there's another struggle here. How can I say? I have to say people's awareness it's not so high. How can I say? People's ethnic identity is not so high, not yet, because I believe Hokkaido was conquered by Japan about 150 years ago. And since then, assimilation policy of Japanese government was so strict, and discrimination against Ainu is still occur. Yeah, still occur. It's not so harsh like old days, but still occur. So lots of people can't have a pride in their mind to live as an Ainu. So elders of nowadays in their 80s, they say their parents speak Ainu when they are only adults. But when children coming around, they stop speaking in Ainu and just only use Japanese. That's their parents' desire. They can have a pride in their mind as an Ainu, so they wish their children to live as a Japanese. So that's the reason nowadays basically nobody can speak the language. So when I started twice a week, parents' reactions, oh, twice a week is too much for us. So we bring our children just once a week. So most of the children just coming once a week now. And this is a school's picture. We started Nibutani elementary schools Ainu language class. We have 10 hours per year, 10 hours per year. Basically once a month, like once a month activity. But we started this, I believe it's 8 years ago. So Japanese elementary schools have integrated study hours, about 70 hours. So in there, each schools can decide what to learn. So I think it's relatively easy for schools to put in some local cultural studies. So Nibutani elementary schools started Ainu language class. Lucky for me, unfortunately for me, the principal at the time was very bossy, a very bossy person. So he decided to have Ainu language class 10 hours per year without any consent of other teachers. So that's the way we started this activity in school. In that time, same year, I had a position in a museum, Municipal Ainu Cultural Museum as a curator. So it's really convenient for school too to invite me as an instructor. And so first I don't get many support from teachers, so I had a struggle time. But right now I can say we are cooperating together, and the teachers and I create classes. So I can say we're doing well right now, but it's still just 10 hours per year. So we can't say we put in the Ainu language class in the so concrete Japanese school's curriculum, not yet. Let me talk about Atalangi method. In 2017, I visited Aotearoa, New Zealand, and as a member of a bunch of trainees. I and my wife and my daughter were in that group. And it was a so amazing journey. 5 weeks, we visited many communities in North Island of New Zealand. Maori people welcomed us as Indigenous brothers. So with lots of people's support, we had a really great experience in there. in one place called Taranaki, Parihaka Taranaki region. We met this person, Ruakere Hondo. He was a mentor of our Atarangi method. He was a good facilitator of this method. Luckily, we have an opportunity to learn this method thoroughly about 10 days. So once we are in the session, we only use that language. If we're learning Maori, we only use Maori. If we learning Ainu, we only use Ainu. So the way of thinking is that you are a fluent speaker from the first step. You just have limited vocabulary. That's the way of thinking. So we only use like these plastic blocks, and like this. I just say kunne. You don't know what is kunne, but kunne. Then you realize kunne means black. So in that way, you increase your vocabulary. In one lesson, we only introduce 7 new words. More than that, it's too much. So first, we learned Maori versions Tarangi, and after that, do you think you can use this method in Ainu? Ruakere asked me, and I demonstrated in Parihaka. And after that, we continue our relation, and this center woman, Elena Brewerton from Hamilton, she's another great mentor of Atarangi. This is a camp. I invited many, mainly young Ainu people who want to revive the language. So Elena explaining the Atarangi method. After that, I keep continuing the Atarangi method in Nibutani. So this is the first group I started with them. They are from the Ainu Association's youth group. And right now, since then, it's been 9 years. I can say now I have the third groups, but we can say we're doing pretty well. We started to enjoy our conversation just using Ainu 1 hour and a half, and we can enjoy it. Other than this, I have a Zoom online Atarangi session. In there, about 30 people gathering once a week, and we're doing it and enjoying it. And fortunately, I have a position right now. I have a position in a municipal government educational division, and I have a private office here, and I share the office with my assistant boy. He's also really eager to speak the Ainu. So we have our own rule. We only speak Ainu when we are just 2 of us. We continue that rule 2 years right now. It's so easy for us to speak only Ainu. It's still really difficult for us to discuss about complicated things in only Ainu, but I feel progress. I feel the progress, and yeah, it's a good training for me. What time is it? So I feel we're doing fine for about adults. It's going well, but on the other hand, children, when I visit New Zealand, Aotearoa, many people said to me, you better start from little child. If you have emerging type schools, kindergarten schools, elementary school, they are so fast to learn the language. So that's true. I think so. This Atalang method is not for children. They can't keep the concentration some amount of time, just speak the language. So I know it's not for children, but so my biggest dream is I can say I want to create the emergent type kindergarten or elementary schools, but I can say we're in the stage of creating the teachers of the kindergarten or elementary school. So I think I'm talking too much. Now I like to switch the speaker's roles to Takao Okazaki. He's one of my best friends, and he's a best supporter of Ainu language revitalization movement. So Taka, now you can talk a tons of good thing about me. Yeah, thank you very much. I believe we have Q&A session after this, so I like to answer any questions you have. Thank you very much. Yeah,
Thank you very much, Kenji-san.
Yeah, thank you.
Now we are moving on to the comments from Professor Takayuki Okazaki. Please.
Yeah, Kenji Nispa.
Yeah. Okay.
Iran karapte Nispa utara kakkema utara narata skupekune wa Okazaki Takayuki sekoro kurehean. Kani ainu ka somokune koroka ainu itak kutokue koro itak nekusu kupasere kane keoripa kane kuyai honokka koroan. Tane kinda kampino echise otta kunepuki koroka zoom kari Kenji Nispa ainu itak unepa sinupukusu. Apeto zoom teatarangi sekoro aye ainu itak patek cheiwanke ainu itak ukoyai honokka chiki. Kanika teatarangi chiki sinetunpuku koro wa pon no kukasui koro kan. Konkane do neakka Kenji Nispa ainu itak patek cheiwanke zoom tumpu kara wa nea tumpu otta nep neakka chitak yakka pirika sekoro Kenji Nispa yekusu pirika no kuitak aikap ka kishi kitto kuieru suyo kue koro kan. Iran karapte, my name is Takayuki Okazaki. Although I teach social linguistics at Kinda University, I have been studying Saru dialect of Ainu language from Kenji for the past 2 years on Zoom. Saru dialect is one of many Ainu dialects spoken in Ainu communities along Saru River, including Nibutani. Kenji mentioned the contribution of Shigeru Kayano for Nibutani Biratori community and also Ainu community as a whole. For me personally, I like to mention the previous speaker, Shiro Kayano-san's work in Nibutani, including his political work, as well as Tokyo's Akemi Shimada-san's work for indigenous exchange with Native Americans, as well as Maori from Aotearoa, New Zealand, for youth leadership. Their vision helped me. Their generosity allowed me to participate as an interpreter at the beginning, and sometimes as a facilitator for this exchange and also workshops. I'd like to show my gratitude to their leadership that connected me to Kenji. I met Kenji 10 years ago when he was a forestry worker. I didn't know much about him back then, but actually he was very active learning Ainu language, visiting Ainu elders, Ainu teachers and linguists in his free time to improve his Ainu knowledge of Ainu language and culture. I learned a lot about him, as he mentioned, when he participated in 5-week Ainu Maori exchange program in 2013, organized aforementioned Akemi Shimada, and I am a secretary of the organization with my wife, and Kenji and his family, Maki and Maya, traveled, participated in this 5-week program. I learned how Kenji is from Kansai like me, and as he traveled around Japan, he met his wife, Maki, in Nibutani, and now, since then, he has been very committed to Nibutani, improvement of Nibutani community, and especially with the Ainu language revitalization. As Kenji mentioned, we were strongly impressed with Maori's concerted efforts of language revitalization. Kohangareo Maori Immersion Nursery School, Kurakapapa Maori, Maori Public Schools, Wananga Maori University, and Maori televisions, where they have 2 channels. One is Maori 50%, English 50%, the other Maori 100%. And also Maori's political participation. We are also impressed with all the other nationwide and also tribe-wide systematic efforts of their revitalization of the culture. As Kenji mentioned, Ruakere Hond, who is the leader of Te Atarangi approach. We were very impressed in Aotearoa, New Zealand, that Te Atarangi community language revitalization effort, mainly with adults. While they make a complete immersion approach of not using English at all, even with the real beginners, they emphasize on the creation of safe space so that the slowest person learning feels comfortable following and mastering the language at their own pace. They also taught us some Maori have different degrees of whakama, or shame, to learn their own indigenous language. So some carry more baggage than others, as opposed to people like me, who can come and go to study an indigenous language, and that is privilege. Together, Kenji and I have invited Te Atarangi experts to Japan. We have visited Aotearoa again to learn and introduce more people to Maori approach of language revitalization. Kenji is very aware that the resources Ainu have are very different from Maori. In 2022, we can't have a Ainu immersion public school right away. It's not possible. As Shiro Kayano-san discussed, the public education in Japan with a strong national curriculum doesn't allow us to have too much of flexibility. So as Kenji mentioned, even in Nibutani Elementary School, he has 10 hours per year, which is already a success though, that it wasn't there before. With Kenji's commitment, he was able to talk to the people in the community. And as he mentioned, the bossy principal of the school, that he was able to get 10 hours of Ainu language. With their community efforts, they maintained Ainu language classes for children and adults, as he mentioned. Kenji, after working at the museum, he got a position now as an Ainu language educator in Biratori Town's Board of Education. And not only that, he uses all of his free time in the evening to teach in the Nibutani community once or twice for children, twice a week for youth with Te Atarangi in Nibutani, as well as other communities like Urakawa on weekends, and also online community who wants to improve Ainu language like me. Once a week Te Atarangi, once a week free conversation. So he sometimes is up until 1 a.m. for me and others on Friday night, just answer questions or help continue the conversation in Ainu. I know UC Berkeley is a place where Professor Leon Hinton is based. Together with California Native Americans, Professor Hinton created the world-famous Master Apprentice program, where an older fluent speaker master spends 15 to 20 hours per week with a learner apprentice to pass on the language and revitalize the language. Currently, this Master Apprentice program is adopted by speakers of more than 100 indigenous languages around the world. When I talked to Kenji about Master Apprentice program, he wasn't aware of this program, but as he mentioned, Kenji is actually doing something like this in his own office with his youth that he has working with him in that room that you can see behind in Kenji's Zoom room behind him. In that room, he only uses an Ainu language with Keisuke Nishpa there, Keisuke Nishpa there. They only use Ainu language with each other. So he does do Master Apprentice program there by themselves, improving fluency on a daily basis. And it is amazing to see how much his Ainu fluency improved, but also he creates many more Ainu fluent speakers. As an offspring of the majority Japanese, Shamo Oshisam, I cannot end this commentary without mentioning how severe Japanese colonization assimilation was and continues to be against Ainu people and Ainu language. So much was done before 1899 former Aborigine Protection Act, but it was this law that created former Aborigine schools, Kyudojin Gakko, where the majority of classes were teaching Japanese language and Japanese ethics so as to Japanize Ainu. Thus, the Ainu language was destroyed. As early as 1931, Kaizawa Tozo in Ainu's Cry said, "Today, few young Ainu understands me if I talk to them in Ainu. Now the elderly speak Ainu among themselves, but most of them speak Japanese to young Ainu." So in 1931, many elderly Ainu are speaking Japanese to Ainu youth. So as Kenji mentioned, the colonization was so strong. Unfortunately, in 2022, it is very, very unlikely to find a native speaker of Ainu. However, Ainu language is said to have many linguistics documentations compared to other so-called endangered languages. In fact, linguists visited native speakers and audio recorded many conversations, many stories in 1970s and 1980s. As those speakers passed away, now many Ainu are learning from these descriptive linguists. Kenji is also learning a lot from these linguists, as well as archives created from these recordings. But not only that, he's very committed to creating actual speakers. So Kenji's work is very unique, very timely, and very needed for Ainu language speakers. When I talk to him, he always says, there's so much to do, and it's not enough. He doesn't sleep oftentimes to work on creating Ainu materials or Ainu speakers. But for me, compared to 2013, when I met Kenji, when I spent time with Kenji in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we talked a lot about Ainu language revitalization, our dreams. Compared to that 2013, it looks much more bright. With his commitment, young people are following him. With his leadership, more speakers are created. And I am very much looking forward to 2025, 2030, 2040, more and more young speakers are going to be created. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Takayuki Sensei. When I first met Kenji-san, I think it was 2016, that what really impressed me was that Kenji-san said he would do anything to revive the Ainu language. And it was very clear that his commitment is deep down there. And even for the past 5 years, I can really see that things are developing. I see more and more video clips. I see more activities happening. So as Takayuki Sensei said, I can really see that things are moving towards the brighter direction. I can see it's still a long way to go, but I think number of people who are committed to make that happen. I think that's very important. So I have to say, Kenji-san kept telling us that he doesn't have a plan or big future plans, but from what I've seen, you've done so much in even the past 5 years since I got to know you, but I can see that before that, you put a lot of work into this as a groundwork, and I'm sure that you'll find a way to keep pushing this movement forward. And also, Taka Sensei, thank you so much for your constructive comments and suggestions. And the part of the idea of this talk series is really to have conversations between scholars and people who are actually doing real work in the field. And I think today's talk was a really good example of how we could collaborate. And I think your presentation and comments made all of us think, what can we do to make these changes happen? And so I would really like to thank you two again for the great presentation and the productive discussion. And I'd like to thank everybody who participated in this session today, and hope to see many of you tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, like it.